from a leadership team level, it's a very quick reprioritization of what's important in the business. That new shiny thing is not as important anymore as making sure that you're communicating with your customers about the current situation.
All right, everybody. Hey, Chris George here from SubSummit. Excited to have Ben back from Athletic Greens. Ben, thanks for being on again. How are you doing?
Chris. I'm doing great, thanks. Yeah, really doing well.
With our Hope in Crisis series, we're really looking for individuals that are able to sort of manage what's happening. And you've got a ton of experience as a COO and with Athletic Greens in terms of sourcing products, and there can be some difficult times for individuals in regards to that right now. And then another really cool thing, which I want to make sure we touch on today too, is I know that your team's all built remote, and a lot of these brands have had to sort of pivot to that, right? Everybody's working from home. Some people aren't really used to it, and there's probably some really good tools that you guys use to kind of keep track of everybody's work and really help keep everybody on the same page. Love to just like quickly go into State of the Union for Athletic Greens. How's that affected your business, and what are some of the things adjustments you've made?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I think we're one of these businesses that are quite fortunate in an unfortunate set of circumstances, in that, the product that we make is in high demand right now as people really look to try and, cover all of their nutritional bases and build up their immunity and just improve their overall health. So from that standpoint, look, we're certainly very fortunate. Our company was built as a remote company first. So we're not a company that has some satellite offices or that are now remote as just a result of the current circumstances. The whole company was built to be remote from day one. So, there's not really a change in how we're doing our day-to-day business from a team management perspective, from a communication perspective. That's all sort of remained. We've certainly had challenges in our supply chain, though. And some of the things that we've set up, sort of over the past sort of 12 months have meant that we've had really, really good visibility into our supply chain. And I think that is so often an afterthought for a lot of companies. So that's been a sort of a driving force for us at Athletic Greens, is to really focus in on the visibility within our supply chain, making sure that we get a lot of great information on a regular basis from our partners across the whole supply chain, and digging deeper as well. So, you might deal with a supplier or a vendor, but who are they getting their product from? And look a little that next step beyond to really understand, they might have capacity, but do their suppliers have capacity? And as far deep as you can go into your supply chain will help you understand issues before maybe even your vendors see them coming.
You've seen an uptick in volume during this, right? And have you had some struggles in regards to getting some of those products? You mentioned there's been some delays, because things kind of flipped fast. Right. A month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, you kind of felt it coming. Right. But even then you don't have a lot of time to make a lot of adjustments. But then it was almost like a blink of an eye where all of a sudden everybody went the next day they're working from home. How have you overcome some of that? What are the issues you're into? I think it's really good for people to hear some of the struggles as well and how you might overcome them. How did you communicate with the customers, things like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, it's been really from a leadership team level, it's a very quick reprioritization of what's important in the business. That new shiny thing is not as important anymore as making sure that you're communicating with your customers about the current situation. We've seen just, as it relates to the final mile delivery services are under strain right now. They're delayed. There are some third-party logistics companies, or even in your own warehouse, you might not be able to operate. For us, it's at a leadership team, it's being where are we exposed to any risk? Whether that's even now or potential in the future as we continue to see the unemployment rate increase, what potential impacts might that have? Not only what are we dealing with right now, but what could we be dealing with in 6 months' time? And a lot of the decisions that we make now could be reversed in 6 months' time if the unemployment rate continues to skyrocket.
Yeah, that's one thing I think that we need to be thinking about is with this unemployment rate going up. I think in Michigan, it's as high as 25% or something wild like that. There's going to be these long-term effects where people are going to start cutting certain expenses out of their life, right? So you said, things you do now may change. How are you guys thinking about if the unemployment rate does go up? What adjustments are you making? Are you like maybe ordering less inventory for those months? Are you getting the suppliers sort of ready but not putting in the full order? How are you thinking about that right now?
We're doing a whole bunch of sensitivity analysis around what does a crazy upside case look
Sure.
like? Like what happens if revenue triples?
Right.
And then what's a significant downside case look like? And doing a lot of analysis from a financial forecasting perspective. So we at least have a little bit of an idea of what that would look like from a cash flow perspective. Just because right now we're seeing, we're very lucky to be one of the fortunate companies that are seeing growth. That doesn't necessarily mean that we go, great, we're seeing all this growth, let's start expanding the team. If anything else, we're very, very conscious of our indirect spending and our direct costs as well. So we're continuing to try and look at, although we're growing and things are looking great from a revenue perspective, it could very well change. Like we don't necessarily really want to grow the team too crazy right now because, anything can happen. So where do we look to outsource some functions so that we're reducing that human resources risk, and you can scale them and bring them back down a lot easier in an outsourced world than you can if you start significantly hiring.
A nice lesson there is some businesses, they get what's called like get lucky rich, and they've got a great business, but there's like these ins and outs and data that they really don't pay attention to. They earn a lot of revenue very fast, they spend it kind of wildly, and they're not prepared for something like this that may happen, or an economic downturn, or just a bad month. One of the key lessons here is like conserve some of this money if you're having some growth. Be cautious about any sort of potential expansion, like you mentioned, as we kind of ride this wave out and see what unfolds.
Even if it's like, expansion when you can, obviously, makes some sense, but also sort of trying to look at that from a risk perspective and saying, well, maybe there's some global expansion that can be done, maybe with these companies like eShop World or Flow.io, who, help you expand globally from your US market, right? Because, we might see, a fairly significant downturn in the US, but, the EU might be quicker to turn around and grow. And like, China is obviously bouncing back, and, being able to sort of spread your risk, not only across different and varying products and verticals as it relates to your SKU mix, but also in market distribution as well.
Yeah. Sometimes an entrepreneur doesn't like to sell out. I think it's sometimes okay, right? So don't overbuy and be conservative. And there could be some really good growth these next few months, but things could drop in July, August, September. In your case, it's like, I don't know how many SKUs you have, but it's a replenishment SKU, right?
Yeah.
So
small.
Small, where other brands are buying discovery products or multiple SKUs, and they should be really cautious about that. And I think that's a key takeaway that I took was conserve the cash if you're seeing success. Be cautious, look at the risk analysis in regards to any sort of investment, and try to lower that risk by making decisions in terms of expansion, like you mentioned, other countries that are smart. That's great.
And I'd say even just like, doing the downside sensitivity analysis
it's
work,
smart.
even if you're seeing the upside, right? It's just be prepared.
Right. What does the business look like at a 40% reduction in revenue? Right. How do we manage that? Super smart. Super smart.
Yeah.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Boo. Boo-hoo. Aw, don't cry. Bulu's can build your subscription box program. Bulu. Awful jokes, awesome boxes since 2012. Email our founder to complain about the knock knock joke or to learn more about how Bulu builds subscription boxes for companies like Disney, BuzzFeed, and Crayola at paul@bulugroup.com. But don't tell him we gave you his email. That's paul@bulugroup.com. Email today. Twice. Email him twice today.
Okay, so next thing I'd love to touch on, you guys are remote first. You've never been in a satellite office or anything of that nature. A lot of brands are probably having an adjustment period going to remote. Tell us how that works for you guys, some of the tools you might be using, and other things that work really well to manage the remote business.
Most people are using some sort of or have access to some sort of video conferencing tool, whether it's Zoom or Skype or Google Hangouts or whatever.
Right.
So I think like a really simple thing is make sure every single meeting is a video call. I think some other little sort of things that we've just found make it a little more personable as well is make time at the start of every meeting to have some water cooler chat. So, for example, on our operations team, the start of every single meeting is question time. at the start of those calls, whoever's asking the question, let's say I'm asking the question, it could be as simple as, what are you most looking forward to once this whole thing blows over? And every single person on the call will answer what they are. And so we've done this 100 times now so far on the ops team. So, and we log it every single time as well. So anyone new that comes on, we say, you want to learn about the team, go into this board, look at question time card, and there's like 100 questions
That's awesome.
and answers. We've just found this one, it's just a really great, it's fun. Sometimes it's deep and meaningful or philosophical, and sometimes it's just, a really something easy, like what are you grateful for, or what's your favorite snack or something. But it's a great way to learn and understand people. And also sort of, if you're in an office environment, chances are you're having some of this random chit chat conversation because you get to the boardroom, for example, and then 5 minutes later, someone else strolls in, and then 3 minutes later, someone else strolls in. And within that time, you're not sitting there in silence, right? You're having a little bit of general chit chat. Whereas typically when you've got a video call and you're remote, it's straight into business. Why are we all here? There's feels like there's less of that just general conversation and chat. So we make a purpose to have that at the start of every call.
You mentioned in the office, people come in, and the office meeting people are a few minutes late. Look, I'm guilty of it, is like probably anybody. Like I just I get stuck on something. Do you notice with phone calls, people are more on time?
We're mostly pretty good. I think, it always happens on occasion that some call blows over and feeds into the next one. I try to make my one-on-ones 50 minutes instead of, 1 hour. Just so, again, same like you, so you've got that little bit of block of time where it could be to get a snack or make a coffee or go use the bathroom or something like that, right? And, it's important. So, and we make sure that people know that it's important. And question time for us is just as important as going through the project or whatever that meeting agenda is about, because that's part of our culture and who we are, and getting to know each other is important to us.
What are you using for internal communication? Do you use a Slack, or do you use like Microsoft Teams?
We use Slack. Some cool little takeaways on Slack as well, I'd say. Check out the integrated apps, because there's some really cool ones there. We use one called Donut. So Donut pairs random people together, right, to do a chit chat, right?
Or do a one-on-one.
Exactly. We also use TeamPay on Slack, which is great for organizations who have to approve credit cards. So in TeamPay, you go in there and you just say, hey, I need to buy a pencil, and it'll say automated, comes back and says, great, like, where do you want to buy it from? You say, like, Amazon. You say, how much are you going to spend? It'd be like $5. And then it'll say, do you want this one time, or is it a recurring payment? You say one time, it'll go, great. It then sends it to whoever the approver is, and they'll say yes or no. And if they say yes, it sends them back a one-time use credit card that they can go and use. Right? I know you integrate that with your accounting systems, and it's really, really easy.
I never heard of that.
And I think just, some little kind of housekeeping things with Slack is all. When you're on a Zoom call, put your Slack on mute or shut it down. And if you've got deep work time as well, do the same thing, right? So it's so easy. The one thing, like, Slack is amazing, but can also be very distracting in that you hear, you're like, tick, tick, you're like, oh, what's that? So shut it down when you've got deep work time, and just make sure that whatever your deep work time is, that you're focused on that. Because that's one great thing about remote, is that your deep work time can truly be really deep work, in that you don't have people knocking on your office door. You don't have, someone swinging by and just going, hey, or what's going on. Like, you can actually be fully focused at that time. So make sure you're removing the distractions away so you can actually do that.
And do you think Slack takes over for the, like, hey, turning my chair, like, hey, Ben, I got a question for you?
I think so. I mean, I think so. For us, we only use email for if there's an external party. All other internal communication is via Slack. We're very transparent as well. So we have channels set up for optics that get posted either daily or weekly or monthly, depending on what they are. All reports get posted for the entire company to see. So we're very transparent in that way. The good thing about sort of Slack versus someone yelling out to you across the room is that, if you're diligent in when you're checking your Slack messages, you're not getting interrupted. So every time you get interrupted, then your brain switches
it's
over
like
here,
a 20-minute. It's a 20-minute delay.
Exactly.
Like, what other tools? Is there any other free tools or any tools that you guys use that really help with the team collaboration being remote?
So we use Asana, which is free for a certain amount of members. We use that for all of our projects. And I think a really key thing that we've really only just sort of implemented is like a Darcy framework, essentially. So every single project has a decision maker, has someone who's accountable, has who's responsible for doing the work, who's a contributor, or who's consulted, essentially, and then who's informed, and making sure that every single project has a very, very crystal clear framework as who is responsible for delivering it, who is the approver, all of that sort of stuff.
Is it like just a Trello? Is it another? Similar
Yeah, it's
project
probably got
management?
some more features, and it's probably a
Got it.
little better for project management. But
Yep.
you can have a larger team on Trello
Right.
for free than you can on Asana.
Right.
So Asana probably has
Makes
some better
sense.
features and some automation and things like that. But you do, once you add a few more people, you have to pay for it. So
Right. Have
yeah, it's a good tool.
you tried Airtable? Have you
We've
heard of?
used Airtable for just some like gathering some feedback and stuff, but we haven't used it as a project management tool.
Yeah. So not necessarily for project management, but it's almost like a Excel on steroids a little bit,
Yeah.
right? So, and I think that's a free tool to a certain extent, but I found that that's nice that if you've got spreadsheets and you want to have documents associated to a certain cell or a certain
Yep.
row, it's a nice way to sort of manage
Oh, that's
things. So
interesting.
I
I'll
think
check
that's
that out a bit more.
yeah, I think that's a cool, for those listening, I think,
Yeah.
Asana, Trello, great options. Check out
Yep.
Airtable. These are all sort of tools that can be free out there that can really help. Where Airtable's nice, I'll give an example. Let's say you've got multiple people that are accessing, let's say, a certain list, and multiple people there needs to be documents. So somebody gets the documents, they can upload it to Airtable, and then the designer can pull the documents from Airtable, let's say designing something for that specific client or for that customer.
Yep.
So we found success there.
Yeah, we've got a couple of other. So there's, some of the Atlassian tools. So Jira and Confluence, they're free up to a certain amount of users, and they're great for sort of more technical project management, or Confluence for document management. Really, really great tools. The other thing that Atlassian have as a resource, which is free and absolutely awesome, is what they call their team playbook. And so if you kind of Google the Atlassian team plays or something like that, or their team playbooks, it's called something like that. There's just a whole bunch of resources on really, really effective ways to either lead meetings or to do like something like a team health check monitor, where you ask a certain amount of questions. Everyone's closing their eyes and they're either thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or thumbs down in terms of gut feeling. How do you think we're doing as a team on this? So no one's influenced by anyone else, and you can facilitate it through these free tools that they have, which are really good. We've used them a bunch of times in our operations offsites and various things. They're really good resource.
And so how big is the team, Athletic Greens? How many
total is about 50.
So 50 people all working remote, and successful business. Tons of growth, able to manage. So I think for those listening, it's adapting to this times can be super beneficial. This maybe get you to rethink how you plan. If maybe you're renting an office and lease is going to come up, there's some cost savings, right, involved with not having all that overhead. Does your team like yearly or twice a year get together?
So each sort of department gets together fairly regularly. It could be a couple of times a year or quarterly. The ops team probably meet a little less frequently because our projects are usually a lot longer. Whereas say like the marketing team meet a little more regularly because they're adapting and have to change a lot more quickly. And
where are they meeting?
The collaboration, all over the place. Mexico was the last time they met. They've done San Francisco. They did Charleston. There was one other thing that I was going to say that I think is an important kind of tidbit. So if you're in a growth phase and you are bringing people on, and you're bringing them on and straight into a remote environment, or maybe even in yourself, if you're joining a remote company, is allow in yourself, if it's you, or allow it in others, just that little bit more time for someone to get up to speed, because they're not hearing people talking in the background about the business. They're not kind of learning by this osmosis, so to speak, in terms of hearing things that are going on in the background or what other people are talking about, and just understanding the ins and outs of the business could take a little longer.
That actually brings up a really good point. So do you have a pretty sort of like good onboarding process that's in place that sort of gives the look and feel of the brand, understands the story of the brand? Is that something you give to them? What does the training look like?
So we're actually just transitioning right now onto a new tool called Lessonly, which will help. It's really for training teams and guiding teams, but you can watch videos, you can have content and ask questions afterwards. So we're transitioning to that for onboarding of any new team members. We'll go through this whole Lessonly process of understanding all the bits and pieces of information. But prior to that, super simple. We had just a whole bunch of information in Google Docs. So we had an onboarding template. Once a month, we have an entire company call, which is a Zoom call. All the folks, we go through the leadership team or people from the individual teams, talk through. We record it every single time. And part of the onboarding process is sharing the last 2 to 3 of these recorded calls and just say, go and watch that. And then you can you're going to hear from a whole bunch of different people in the organization. You're going to hear how we run these calls. We share a bunch of the company updates. I'll say, go and review these Slack channels and look at some of the conversation and look at this post and share a lot of information. We set up one-on-ones with a whole bunch of people in the team, not only those who they're going to be working with, but people from other departments as well, just to get to meet people and learn about what others do in the organization. Yeah. And then there's more the one-on-one aspect with the say the actual manager of that person who's joining. That's going to be a lot more sort of job specific. What do we need to cover off to get you up to speed?
Ben, all of this stuff has been amazing. Thank you so much for all your support with Subta. I'm hoping that we'll see you in November at SubSummit. But I'm sure we'll be in touch between now and then. And again, thank you for being on, and I hope to chat soon.
Right. Thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Ben.